Hi, and welcome again to another fine edition of On the Spot. My name is Ronnie Wiley. To my left is, you really need no introduction. I'm sure there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of students that you taught that are watching this program right now. Ann Kirschner, Miss K, to everyone, welcome, and you are on the spot.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you for the opportunity to appear on this show.
Yeah, you know, I tell you, I was planning on what to talk about, but first I got to share with what you mean to me. When I was a rebel, you remember I was a rebel in high school. Randy Judd knows how much of a rebel I was. And I had to take my senior year over again. You know, I liked it so much, I had to take it over again. And I took a night school class. Now, when I moved over here to Connersville, I was in the high school, so I didn't have you in junior high. And I had heard about Mrs. K from my sister, Debbie. And, well, I had you my senior year. And you treated us like adults. And one of my favorite stories that I've shared with you many times and I've shared with my kids was the time that, at the time back then, we were allowed to smoke during our break. So me and Beth Anderson and Holly Job and Scott Wilhelm, we went to smoke. And our 10-minute break turned into, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes or whatever. We were doing our own thing because we were adults. And so we come back to class and you were gone. You were nowhere to be found. We got a 0 for that day.
And an unexcused absence.
And an unexcused absence.
Yeah.
So luckily, it made me realize, well, we're not being babied here anymore. You know, I was being treated like the adult that I thought I was, that really didn't want to be treated like, if that makes any sense. But I did graduate with your help and your grace.
Well,
so thank you. Because of you, I graduated high school.
I'm very proud that you graduated from high school. I'm glad that I was able to influence you in some sort of positive
very positive way.
To encourage you, if you want to be an adult, then start acting like one.
That's what you said. I think that's what you said.
I think that's what I said the next day. Yeah.
Where we came back, and where were you? I waited 30 minutes and you weren't back. So, but again, you talked about influence and you talked about being positive. You know, you and I go way back. We've been friends this entire time, and I've got to know you as an adult, not just a child adult, but as an adult. And I just keep admiring you more and more. You've had a positive influence on my life. You've been a teacher for a lot of years. You've talked to thousands of kids. Who was your influence?
I think my influence largely was my grandfather, who was also a teacher at a time when the teaching profession was not highly regarded, certainly not financially highly regarded. Mm-hmm. My father used to say that Grandpa would teach even if he didn't get paid for it, and he really enjoyed his job. He was very involved. He was on the 1914 Wingate State Championship basketball team.
Oh, wow.
And so as a child, one of the things that I really enjoy as an adult is sports. And I started going to basketball games when I was 2, started keeping a scorebook when I was 8 because my grandfather coached. But I think the education was very valued in my home. It was always assumed that I would go to college, graduate from high school, go to college. And I think I've known since I was about 12 that I really wanted to be a teacher. My father was not too enthusiastic about that at times. He came to understand that that's really what I was supposed to do. And I really feel in a very vocational way that being a teacher is what has been my life's work and what I was supposed to do with my life.
Did you have an epiphany moment, or was there just at the age of 12, it just clicked that I need to teach?
I think it probably happened when I was a senior in high school, because I came from a very, very small high school, Rensselaer Central, up in the northwest part of the state, which, by the way, they won the 2A football championship last weekend. It was wonderful as an alum. They didn't have enough for me to do when I was a senior in high school. Mm-hmm. So they had a class of 8th graders. The junior, senior high school were together. They had a class of 8th graders who were struggling, and the teacher was struggling with them. So they decided that Ann would take this class out, pull these kids out, and be their tutor/teacher, because it kept me out of trouble. And I had that class of 8th graders all year for a class period. And the curriculum was provided by the regular classroom teacher, but in essence, I was responsible for them. Right. And it just clicked. This is what I was supposed to do, and I always kind of knew, but I think that experience as an 8th grader, as teaching those 8th graders when I was a senior in high school, was probably the epiphany moment. Like, yeah, this is it. This is what I need to do.
So, and we've talked too, and one of the things I'm sure there's a lot of people may not be aware of, that you're a lawyer too, or
Yeah.
you practiced law in the past.
I did. I moved after I graduated from college. I got a job teaching school in Michigan, and then I got laid off. And my father had purchased a business in Florida, and I was really unencumbered at the time. And he says, well, come down and work for me. So I went to work for my father in Florida. He had a Napa Auto Parts store, so I worked in an auto parts store. He eventually sold the store, and I didn't want to continue working there. And by this time, I had collected a husband. And and
off the street in Florida.
Off the street in Florida,
Yeah, I gotcha.
quite literally. And so I decided to go to law school. I was kind of bored, and so I decided to go to law school. And Stetson University College of Law was in St. Petersburg, where I lived, so it was very easy. And I loved going to school, and I really enjoyed the law school experience. But in the midst of law school, we adopted 2 children, and I did take the Florida bar and passed it. And but when we moved to Indiana in 1985, there were no reciprocal agreements between Indiana and Florida, so I would have had to have gone back to school, retaken the bar exam, and by this time I had 3 small children, and I had an Indiana teaching license. I got a job teaching, substitute teaching at the middle school, and the rest is history.
So you substitute teaching, which, you teach any class
Yes.
when you do
yeah.
that.
And it's kind of odd. I've kind of come full circle.
Right.
Because when I started here in 85, I was a substitute, and I worked almost every day. I retired from full-time teaching in 2010, and last year, out of 180 school days, I subbed 140. Which is not exactly retirement, but it is. I really enjoy the interaction with the kids, and I like subbing because I taught in 2 subject areas, and I've found that I've learned so much by subbing in other subject areas that it's been very good for me to keep me up on things. I was math phobic until I subbed in math, and I can brag on the middle school math teachers. They're wonderful. I learned more math from them in a substitute capacity than I did from a lot of the teachers that I had in high school. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy the interaction with the kids. I love middle school age kids, which probably makes me certifiably insane because they're not easy children to deal with.
They're at that age.
Yes, they are.
They're at that age. So the 2 classes you have taught was English and history, correct?
English and history, yes. That's my double major in English and history from
which
college.
are my 2 favorite subjects.
Yes.
Love them. So you're teaching. You're picking up steam by the time I didn't derail you. So you were very strong then. So you keep going and going and going. You finally hit that age of retirement, or you finally hit that point of retirement. Again, what was the deciding factor of it's time to call it a career?
I think the changes in educational philosophy was really and Tony Bennett, who thank God is no longer in charge of the Indiana Department of Education. Tony Bennett did more to demean teachers in his 4 years tenure than anyone had done previously. They focused from a child-centered to a data-centered model, and I have taught thousands of children. I have never taught data.
Right.
And I was having a real philosophical difference with that.
A few people were.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of people retired. A lot of us older people retired at that time because the shift in how we treated the children was, to me, unconscionable. Because they're not data. Children are much more than the sum total of their test scores, and to have this insane amount of pressure being put on these children to perform on a standardized test that's really not very good if you look at it carefully. is I didn't think that was for me. So I got out, and I was old enough to do that. And I thought, well, I'll do different kinds of things. And I had some plans for my life, and they kind of changed. And I thought, okay, I'll just go back and sub. And I really, really enjoyed that. I get all the good parts of teaching without all the bad parts.
Right.
I don't have to grade papers unless I want to. And I used to grade about 3,600 a 6 weeks.
See, I've always told teachers, listen, if you don't want to do homework, don't give us homework.
Oh yeah, but
I
wrong
know, it never
answer.
works. Yeah,
No,
I know.
it doesn't work.
I know.
I did not mind meeting with parents. I loved meeting with the children, but all the administrative paperwork kind of thing that had to be done was you got to a point where you had a choice whether you could do something that you thought would really be in the best interest of the kids or do the paperwork as mandated. And when the mandated paperwork was taking more time than what I thought was in the best interest of the kids, I knew it was time for me to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't overstay your welcome. It's time to go.
Well, no, and I didn't. And, I still think the amount of data that is accumulated on these kids is excessive. I had an administrator ask me once, this was, well, how do you know whether your child is, how the kid is doing in class? And my answer was, I talked to them. And I graded their homework every day.
Right.
And if I graded their homework, and it was off somehow, I would call them up to my desk first thing when they came into class. I said, okay, do you really not understand this, or did you forget about this and do it on the bus on the way to school today? I said, if you don't understand it, come and see me. If you did it on the bus, take it back, do it right, and give it back to me. So I was assessing kids not on a standardized test, but more on a one-on-one. And I think that that's much more effective, particularly with students who don't test well. And a lot of young people do not test well.
I still have a hard time with testing well.
Yeah.
And I think you and I, we've had this conversation before. I think when politics get involved, with the money situation, and it's the standardized test isn't just necessarily grading the kids as much as the performance of the teachers, and I think that's totally unfair as well.
I like to address that because I don't mind taking responsibility for those things over which I have control.
Right.
And as a parent of 3 children who were not the best students in school, I knew my responsibility as a parent. I made sure they had their homework done. I made sure that they attended school. I was the involved parent. I appreciate people, and I was a single parent while my kids were in high school. My husband passed away while all 3 of my kids were in high school. So I recognize the issues involved with that, and they're not easy things to deal with. But ultimately, to have a teacher be held accountable for things over which they have no control, to my mind, is not a good situation. No. I can recall very vividly the last year I taught, I had a group of high-risk students that I had a review class with. And I really was working with these kids, and I was so pleased with the progress that they had made. So the days before I-STEP came up, and I said, guys, I'm so proud of you. I think you're really ready to do this. I said, go home, get a good night's sleep tonight. We'll have breakfast in the morning. One of my very marginal students, a young man that I just had worked with, came waltzing in the day of the test, and he looked terrible. And I said, what's the matter? He says, well, I was up playing video games all night. Now, and he did not pass the test, and yet, under today's thing, I would be held accountable for that.
Yeah.
And I had no control over it.
Right.
And I think that's where it really breaks down. And again, the tests are so arbitrary and so capricious. And politicians are so far divorced from the real classroom that I think for them to make policy without actually being directly involved with a classroom situation, wherever it may be, is wrong. it's very easy to sit and pontificate and say, this is what you should do in a classroom. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not that easy.
Right. Absolutely.
And Connorsville, and I've lived here for almost 30 years, and it's my home now, but we have a very needy population of students. It's not bad or good, it's just the way it is. And the teachers in this system work their tails off.
Yes.
And they're doing it they have been asked to do a lot more with a lot less. Class sizes are large. They don't have the educational assistance that they need. And one of my big issues in the election was the disparity between upper administration pay and what is being paid to the people in the trenches. We had teachers' assistants that were offered a 16-cent an hour raise.
That's almost rude.
It's insulting. And the attitude has been, well, if you don't like it, you can go find another job and we can find somebody to replace you. No one gets into education to make money. If I wanted to make money, I'd be a lawyer.
Right.
And there are times when I look at my bills, I think,
I should have been,
yeah. But besides that, I am particularly disturbed with Dr. Hodges asking for a raise. And when in negotiations with the teachers, he basically said there was no money. Well, I think he's very well compensated now compared to the teachers in the system. And to me, it's like anything else. And I've been on a budget. I was a single parent. I was the only income. I understand the difficulties, financial difficulties, because I've experienced them personally. But if you have X amount of dollars to spend, for example, on a food budget, you don't buy steak, you buy a lot of hamburger.
That's right.
You spread it out. And to my mind, we need a more equitable distribution of funds. So the people in the trenches, everybody, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the classroom aides, the secretaries, the custodians, because for a school or any business to work well, you have to have all of the people there buying into it. And it's not a top-down management. It has to be a cooperative, collegial kind of thing. Because without the custodians, the schools don't function. Without the secretaries, the school don't function.
Yep.
Without the paraprofessionals, the teachers can't do their jobs. Clearly, the teachers can't do their job without supportive building level administration.
Right.
So these are the people that have made the schools the A schools, and yet they are not getting the compensation that I think they deserve for the job that they do. And so I have a real issue with upper administration salaries being as high as they are now. Because they're taking, to my mind, they're taking credit for something that they're not on the front line of. Give the soldiers, give the people on the front line the recognition that they deserve. Give them raises commensurate with what they do, because they're the ones that are making the difference for the children here in Fayette County. And to treat them, to my mind, they are treated disrespectfully.
I was on a cruise back in October, and one of the things, they had a meet and greet with the captain and everybody, and we were all sitting, and the captain had mentioned, somebody said, you know, how is it fun working on a cruise? And he was talking about how fun it was, and the captain said, you know what, we treat our employees better than we treat you, because they have to, that's how you get great service. If we treat them better than you, then they're going to get, if we give them 1,000%, they're going to give you that 100%. So the point is that teachers are overworked. There's no doubt. Every teacher that I know is overworked. They do it because they sincerely love the kids, and they
Yes.
love their calling, as you call it. It's not a
Yes.
job. And I agree with you. I think if teachers didn't have to worry so much about here's how the things that they can't control of, then we've bought into this myth that our education system is broke. And it really isn't. Just because a few kids on Leno didn't know how to pick out the United States on a map. It's everybody.
No, it's certainly not broken, and I think it's ill, and I think that a lot of the ills of this have been caused by shifting the focus from the children and what's in the best interest of the children to strictly money, because you can cheap out at anything, but you get what you pay for.
Right. Yeah.
And I find it disturbing that so many very highly qualified teachers that are on the top end of the pay scale are leaving for a variety of reasons. And I think that, and the new hires are all new. I mean, and that's fine. I was there myself once,
Right.
and I understand that. But you need veteran teachers to mentor these younger people.
Because burnout rate of
The
teachers
burnout rate is
high.
terrible. The
Incredibly
burnout rate is terrible.
You last 5 years, you've
Yeah.
you've,
Well, I think that policies, when you look more at the bottom line than you do the best interest of the students, and I think that honestly, some people in Fayette County administration have looked at the bottom line more than the best interest of the kids, because they have cut in places that have most directly impacted the students. They've cut teachers' aides, they've made classroom sizes larger, and I realize budget constraints. But my problem is the disparity. We have fewer students in the Fayette County School Corporation now than we did 30 years ago. We have just as much higher administrative staff.
wow.
And we are the only school corporation of our size that still has an assistant superintendent.
Wow. Facts that I didn't know. You talked earlier about your career. You were going to be a lawyer, and then all of a sudden you got into teaching again because that was your calling when you were in 12th grade. This is your first jump into politics, from what I understand.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because I love subbing. And I knew that if I were on the board, I could no longer sub. And I really struggled with that. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? Your life goes through phases. You know, I went through the phase where I taught every day full time, and I loved that. I quit doing that. Then I went in and subbed almost every day for another 5 years. And I decided that as much as I love being in the classroom, I could probably do a better service to the students of Fayette County, my former ones and the new ones, by helping change some policies. So that's why I did that. No, I've never run for office. I'm not a very political person, but I'm a very passionate person about what the children of Fayette County deserve from the school system. We have wonderfully dedicated teachers.
Yes.
Who work extremely hard, and the consensus of opinion is that often they are underappreciated, they are underpaid. There are a lot of policies that I hope to change. One of my real big goals is to make it a more cooperative type management system. It is not at this time. It is very much top-down management. And people's concerns are not necessarily taken seriously, or they are so filtered that by the time they reach people, they're no longer valid. There is a real fear of retaliation if you say anything against a policy, and I think that's appalling, because as educators, you look at the Socratic method. The Socratic method was that of questioning.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
That is a teaching method. So as a professional educator, why don't I have the opportunity to question a policy saying, I really don't think that this is in the best interest of my kids? You know, I understand where you're coming from, but having to implement this is not necessarily going to be, in my opinion, the best interest of the children that I have. You know, let's work with this. Let's get some compromise. And I just have not seen that kind of compromise lately.
You talk. I remember when you retired, you wrote a letter to the editor. Some people liked it, some people didn't. And I immediately thought, oh, she's probably going to throw her name in the hat. Again, you mentioned how much you loved subbing, but what was the turning point where you finally thought, okay, this I am now going to run?
I think I got the opportunity. I saw that the seat in my district was up, and it was like, okay. And I also got the sense of where the teachers were. And admittedly, most of my experiences are at the middle school. That's my family.
Right.
I don't have brothers or sisters. I was an only child. Over the last 30 years, the staff at the middle school have been my family. I care about them. They work hard. They do wonderful things with a very difficult age group of kids. And I looked to see how the policies and the programs were affecting them as people, and also in the way they interacted with kids. And I said, you know what? It's time for me to step back and step out of the classroom and try to make some changes in policy that are going to benefit everyone. The children, the teachers, all the staff. And I did not see that coming from the current board. And I'm going to speak up. I'm a very outspoken person. I do not lie. And I'm very passionate about education and the kids of Fayette County. My late husband used to laugh. He said, "Do you know all the kids in Fayette County?" And I said, "Probably not." But I said, "I'm going to come close." And what's really great for me is I've done registration at the middle school for a lot of years. And I have parents coming in that I had in class with their kids, and they said, "Are you still here?" And I said, "Well, sort of." And they're pleased that I'm still here. I still do middle school athletics. I still yell at the Spartan Bull, move your feet on defense and blocks out.
Fran and I hear you from the top of the bowl.
Yeah, and I'm very much a supporter of all those things that the kids get involved with, because the extracurriculars are so important for a well-rounded child. The choir, the band, whatever you want to do, I always encourage my students to get involved with something, because if you're involved with something, you're liable to do better in a classroom.
Right.
And there are so many of the children here in Fayette County who are in a very difficult home situation.
Right.
And for no fault of their own.
Right, sure.
And as teachers, we have always acted in loco parentis, but now the parentis part is becoming more and more. And when I retired, I got this rock that I have in front of my house, and it says Mama Kay's house.
Yeah.
And I was very proud of that, because I feel as if I am a nurturing person and a mother figure or grandmother figure, as it could maybe, to a lot of the kids. And I think that has given me a credibility with the public, that I really do care about the kids. I volunteer a lot in areas where the kids are involved. This has been my life, and I just thought going on the board was another way, the next step up to helping influence policy, to make life better for all the kids of Fayette County, all the Fayette County School Corporation kids, because they are our future. Yeah. And I think we have to treat them gently, and I think we also have to treat the people that really care about them with a lot more respect and gratitude, because nobody gets into teaching to make money. People who do this do it because they love the kids and they are concerned about it. And to be compensated in the way that some of them are, to my mind, is just wrong. And those are decisions that the school board makes in contract negotiations. So I thought, well, this is kind of a natural next step to do what I'm going to do. And I'm also getting older, and getting up every morning and going to school is getting harder and harder. Yeah. And I don't mind my age. I like being my age. It's kind of
49, right?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, I'll be 66 in January.
I remember,
Yeah, and I don't really mind that. I like the age that I am. I think with age comes a little bit of wisdom. I think with age comes more patience, believe it or not. But I think that you have to keep your passions for what you're really interested in. And I've branched out. I do a lot of...
You wrote a book.
I wrote a book. I co-wrote a book with a friend of mine. In fact, we're having a book signing in Cincinnati on Saturday. I met a friend who wanted a book read, and unfortunately, he couldn't write. And so I edited the book, and we got it published. It's called Meditations of a Modern Day Bishop. It's a Christian journey book.
Oh, good.
And most of the ideas are his, but it was really a lot of fun. And I've also written my own book that I'm getting ready to submit to a publisher. It's called Raging Hormones.
That's the perfect title.
And it's called Raging Hormones, subtitled My 30 Years of Middle School. And it's basically anecdotal about students that I have come across my path over the years. And I think my purpose was that is I see so many young teachers burning out so quickly.
Right. Very quickly.
Very quickly. And this is a series of stories. And I changed the names and the circumstances, except in one case where I did ask the parents for permission, about the children that have had a profound effect upon me.
That's awesome.
And it was very cathartic for me to write that. I've given it to an editor and a publisher, and so we're working on the nuts and bolts of getting it published, hopefully in 2015. But it's a love story, really, of my love of teaching and of middle school kids who are hard to love sometimes, and so I'm looking forward to that. So it's time for me to branch out and do other things. I still do middle school athletics. I enjoy that. Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, I don't think, are worried about losing their job, losing their jobs, or Larry Myers over at the bowl. 3, 2, 1, I don't think that, but I really enjoy it, and it's a love story. I loved working here in Connersville. I'm not going anywhere. I'm very invested in the community. I've lived here almost 30 years. My children have all grown up here. I have my husband and a son buried at Dale Cemetery, sadly. But the people here have been so supportive during very difficult times in my life. I think this is my time to give back to them in a way that I know, because I know the educational system. I've been in the classroom. I know what the people are doing. I'm working so hard for the benefit of the children, and I think the public needs to know that, and I think that the board needs to be better aware of that, because they all have different jobs, and I understand that, but I think I bring a very unique perspective in the sense that I've been in classrooms almost every day for almost nearly 30 years.
We can go on and on and on. We've actually gone over. Justin's flipping out back there. It's, we're going to have to pay him triple time now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we may have to expand this show to an hour now. I'm telling you, that's the fastest 30 minutes in broadcast history. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And like I said, I feel a great responsibility to all the students of Fayette County, not just my district. And I will be a voice for them on the board. And if you have issues that you're about which you're concerned, call me. I'm still in the phone book, believe it or not.
The phone book.
The phone book, yeah. And please feel free to contact me, and I will discuss your issues. I will thank you for trusting me with your issues, and I will follow up on them.
All right. Ann Kirschner, she's on the spot. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month.